Hey, I got a question for you. Are you an active B2B consultant? Are you an experienced professional who is looking to start into the consulting industry? Or are you a student wondering whether or not starting a career in consulting is worth it? If yes to any of those questions, you are a great fit to have a 15 minutes free coaching call with me. And during that call, we will be looking at your career and life goals, as well as your current and past experiences. And we will also be able to figure out whether or not we can together build a roadmap towards building your desired career with your desired lifestyle. So don't hesitate to get in touch with me at consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. COACHING. Consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. Now, let's go and listen to the episode. Hello and welcome to the consulting lifestyle to Joël Collin-Demers. Joël, how are you?
I'm great, great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, we have quite a few common points. We have both actually worked for IBM and also worked with on SAP implementations, and even work on procurement in some procurement projects. So there are a lot of particular things to share in this episode. Can you start, Joel, by sharing to the audience like the highlight of your career story?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, well, it all begins in university for me, at least in this storyline, right? Where I did my bachelor's degree at HEC Montreal in business, and the last year was a specialization in information technology management, and ended up doing an SAP certification, TERP 10, I think it was called at the time. I'm not sure if that's still the case. Most probably. And so got a really good overview of SAP and joined IBM Canada at that point in time, and started focusing on implementing the materials management module, which is the procurement module in the SAP solution suite. And did that for a number of years on various clients, different industries, and also wanted to learn the Ariba suite after SAP had purchased the Ariba suite in, I believe it's 2012. So did a few Ariba projects as well. And the thing I was trying to answer as a question was always like, for a CPO or for a procurement organization, what is the correct configuration, the correct architecture of different solutions to answer the question, right? How do I meet my business objectives in the various different processes that are part of the procurement function? So that was essentially the journey there, and I ended up managing the practice or the sub practice of source to pay within the IBM Canada SAP practice, and left on my own. I think it's going to be 4 years now, 4 years ago now, just to be able to answer that question, but to a higher level as well, right? Which is, how do I best serve the business objectives of the CPO and the procurement function, but technology agnostic, right? There's so many other competitors to SAP on the market. I value Coupa, GP. There's all these best of breed solutions, Tealbook, Parangusta, Hicks. Like there's all this richness in the procurement market. So I really wanted to be able to dig into all of that and be able to be that translator between technology and business for the procurement function.
Yeah, that's that's very interesting because first of all, yeah, you mentioned CPO. So for people that maybe are not used to, is Chief Procurement Officer, like the
Yes.
responsible for the head of procurement in an organization. Um, and what is particular is that there are a lot of consultants that are more specialized on. Okay, I am a Microsoft Dynamics guy, and on Microsoft Dynamics I know procurement. I actually don't know if they have a specific module, but or SAP, like SAP procurement, etc. But here you decided to take a more ERP agnostic approach where everything is possible. So did you see a difference in the reaction of the prospect that you approach when you tell them, okay, I'm not necessarily there to just give you SAP. I'm really there to just listen to what are your needs, and I will look at what will be the tool or the
Yeah.
tools that are appropriate.
Yeah. Well, I think it resonates, right? Because um, different organizations have different baggage, different contexts. So a different industry will have different processes that are more important to them from a procurement standpoint. When I say baggage as well, it's like I'll have a different architecture. I might have 18 ERPs that are already running, some of them SAP, some of them Oracle, some of them JD Edwards. So the context of the organization and its industry is always different, right? So to me, that I sometimes felt like I didn't have all the tools to be able to answer the questions or to correctly solve for a problem with just Ariba and SAP, right? Like it's so different from context to context that I think there's good resonance there, right? Whereas and there's a baggage for me with SAP experience. So for sure, if I'm in a company where SAP is implemented and that's the backbone, then I can bring in a lot more value. But to me, it was always an IT, to go back to my bachelor degree days, IT management focused conversation, right? To say, okay, well, I know about how ERPs work, how interfaces work, middlewares, how the integration should be working between different applications.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's really the conversation we need to have around integration, business processes, and technology comes and serves us, right? And then we live with the limitations or the constraints of the technology that we chose, because it's never perfect. But that's kind of how I think about it and how I have that discussion. And usually the reception is good from clients.
So that's very good. And is there a specific type of client in terms of size, industries, geography, or?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's more, my clients are more local, so Eastern Canada. Since I have the French side of things as well, like there's a good niche for me there as well, where you start piling on a lot of different things, right? Like procurement, technology, French. I have a profile that's fairly unique in that sense. So when folks are doing a procurement transformation, and it's much more like larger businesses, when we get into the around $1 billion and plus revenue is usually the correct type of client for me, because otherwise they don't necessarily have the complexity required or the complexity that needs someone like me to come in and help them roadmap and look at the technology options to meet their objectives. That kind of gives you a perspective, but it allows me to have a niche. And when folks are looking at those types of problems, then I'm the person to call for that
Yeah.
very specific niche, right?
Yeah. So you're, as you just said, you're based in Eastern Canada, like in the greater Montreal area, like me. So and there French is in the province, in the whole province actually. French is very important. One thing that it's one thing to be as you said, like a team lead or a manager at IBM, leading a team of consultants working on procurement tools. But then when you decided to go independent, did you want to go independent by yourself, or did you want a team? Being used to work with many people.
Yeah. And I would say that's probably the thing I miss the most from my IBM days is really the team aspect of things, right? Management of the teams, helping people grow their careers, develop career plans, and then execute as well on the projects with the various clients, right? You get more exposure because you're, as a manager, going from client to client, making sure that things are going well. The illustration I always give is like, the spinning plates on sticks. Like you kind of go from project to project and make sure that all the plates are spinning in the right direction and nothing's falling. So it's another reality, right? And it was just for me, I think, from a lifestyle standpoint, right, to tie it back into your podcast, I was about to start a family. I didn't see the traveling as enticing as it used to be when I was a bit younger. I wanted to reconcile the lifestyle that I wanted to have in my personal life with work a bit more. And to me, I had tried doing that at IBM Canada for about 2 years, where I was asking myself all these types of questions and how I was going to do it. And for me and for my personality type, like I couldn't make it fit, right? Because I in my IBM work, I was very invested and with the teams. And I also really liked having a hand in the solutioning, right? In the architecture, in the nitty gritty details of how's this process going to work from a business standpoint, but also in the application and the configuration. And so I could dive down if I needed to, but also being at that management level could have those executive conversations and be able to have that full range, right? So essentially I told myself if I went independent, it was always with the intention of being a solo consultant, but it was able to say, I have a really large range as well, right? So I can talk to your developers, I can talk to your functional analysts, I can talk to your integration manager, to your project manager, to your executives, and kind of be that translator between the different levels as well of the organization, so that everybody understands the same thing and heads in the same direction, right? So,
That's
yeah,
yeah.
it was always as an independent.
Okay, that's good, and that indeed it exemplify kind of what the podcast is about. You want to live in a certain way, then you choose what's the most appropriate for you. Also, something that we didn't mention at the start, so is when did you start to become independent? I mean, which year?
So it's going to be 4 years now. So what is that? 2019, early
Yeah,
2019. Yeah.
yeah. So early 2019. So in early 2019, everything was, let's say, normal, and then a year later, something happened. So has the pandemic and all the measures that had been taken during about 2 years, how has that impacted your business?
Well, for me, it's just there's been more, and I think for most folks, there's been more distance work, right? But there was also a lot of distance work beforehand. Like if you're in consulting based in Montreal and you've got a client on the East Coast in the US, et cetera, then you're doing a lot of distance work as well. So I think our industry was probably less impacted by that in the sense where we were already ready, operational, knew how to, do cadence meetings and distribute work in a distributed fashion where folks are all remote. So it didn't impact me too much, to be quite honest. I think it was more, the being at home. I was lucky because we quarantined with my parents, and so they were helping us with the young kids while we were working, and they had a place to stay. So that was I think that was a big saving grace, because I think that would have been the hardest part during the pandemic, right? For families with young kids where both parents are working, having them at home, and that's the tough part, right? Is trying to balance those two things, juggle
Yeah,
those
yeah,
two things.
yeah.
So
That would
no,
be.
but from a business standpoint, wasn't too impacted. I think even the processes, right? Like a lot of the processes, I think for some clients, they were still on very manual sourcing processes, for example, and
Mhm.
contract management, still a lot of paper shuffling, getting envelopes, and it forced them to kind of adopt a 21st century sourcing process and do it electronically, right? Either with an application or with SharePoint, but just to kind of modernize very quickly because of a requirement external to their
Mhm.
business.
And going back on that a bit, like for the different CPOs that you meet, or even procurement team members that you meet, what type of when you suggest or when you try to accompany them into selecting a system or implementing a system, what type of fears, or what type of fears or discomfort that you see most often with them?
Well, a lot of it is just uh, a lack of knowledge around the technology offering on the market for procurement,
Mhm.
right? Like we'll know about ERP systems, we know there's procurement systems or source to pay systems, but there's a lot of different things out there on the market, right? And it can get overwhelming
Mhm.
because we're at a stage where we have over 100 different technology startups, companies that have an offering on the market. And so you can get into a paradox of choice situation, right? Where there's so much choice that you're afraid of making a mistake or afraid of not doing the right thing. And you don't necessarily have a lot of history behind you unless you're coming from another organization, because we don't change our procurement systems every year or two, right? It's every 10, 15 year type of endeavor.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of just, okay, well, how do we approach this task, given that there's such a huge offering on the market, and we want to get, you want to make good choices, make good decisions, and get the desired business outcomes, or reach your objectives at the end of the project, right? So there's a lot
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, these are very, very high stakes decision that those people are making. So how do you, if you have a specific way to do it, but how do you try to gain their trust? So we always say people need to know, like, and trust you
Yeah.
before they make that, that purchase decision.
Yeah.
So do you have a specific way to try to get win that trust and keep that trust?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's always been building on your reputation, right? So building on the delivery that you've done in the past. It allows you to gain access to a new opportunity, either through a referral or within the same organization by doing something a bit different, having gained that trust. And then there's demonstrated trust or proxy trust, if I could call it that way, right? So when you ask a client for a reference to another CPO, another procurement organization that might be in a similar situation, or that they could get value from your services, given what you've just done with the CPO, then I find consulting is really all about references and demonstrating value up front, so that you start off with a certain level of assumed trust, and then it's up to you to just quickly confirm that that trust is merited, and then build on that trust with that person in their specific context, right? So show that you understand what's going on, say what you'll do and do what you'll say, deliver above and beyond what you promised, right? So and being able to listen, communicate effectively, right? To me, communication is the meta skill, whether it's reading, writing, speaking, listening. Those are the meta skills, right? If you do that very well, then in consulting, whatever niche or specific topic you choose, you're going to have an advantage over a lot of other folks in the fields where they don't have that base communication skills to be able
Yeah.
to build
Yeah.
trust with the client.
Yes, it's extremely important what you just say. Those yeah, as you say, meta skill are extremely important and are a differentiator. Mostly, even more in IT. I think in information
Yeah.
technology consulting is even a bigger differentiator. And talking about that, those communication skills, I noticed that you do regularly create some content, at least on LinkedIn. Have you can you elaborate on the type of content that you create, and have you started that directly in 2019, or it was after a while you say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna put myself out there?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's important to highlight that if you're going out on your own as a consultant, like there's an entrepreneurial aspect to it, right? Whether you do the marketing piece or not, or what have you, you need to maintain a network. You're going to do your own accounting, or you're going to have to, at least get a good accountant to interact with them. There might be some lawyers you need to interact with, right? So all of that little entrepreneurial um, aspect to solo consulting is something that kind of drew me in as well, because it was something I was attracted to. But it's something we often neglect when we're thinking about, oh, do I want to go as a solo consultant, right? So I just wanted to say that as an aside.
Mhm.
And then to answer your question more directly, I did, have a presence on LinkedIn even before going out on my own. Like, I saw the power of that social network for the business side of things, and I always just had a desire to create, right, and to keep writing. And it goes back to that meta skill, right? Train those meta skills over time. And I find it's a project where even if you fail, you win, in the sense that even if nobody reads what you're putting out there, you're fine tuning your writing, fine tuning your thinking. And specifically for the posts that you mentioned on LinkedIn, it's been on and off, right? So, life happens, and you have you have two children under 2 years old, and you have no time to do that, or you have no energy, right? So there's been on and off times where I've done that, but when I have been regular in posting, it's usually just being in that mindset, right, of going through your day. And then as soon as you're in a meeting, or you're discussing a topic where you say, hey, right, like, this is a nugget that is worth capturing, is worth sharing, is worth thinking about, reflecting about, discussing with folks. That's kind of my process, right? I'll just take a note, and then when I'm thinking about what I want to post for that week, then I'll write my couple posts on the nuggets that I picked up during that week, and no week fails to disappoint, right? So I kind of jump from topic to topic, depending on what I'm working on that week, what I've seen. even other posts I may interact with. And to me, it's just it brings such a richness to my thinking, regardless of if people interact with it or not. But then the bonus is that folks interact with it. I might push your thinking further, or it might also get people tuned into to your content, what you have to say, and then discussions that eventually lead to interesting work as well, or just interesting conversations and interesting friends and connections as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very, very encouraged, as you said, like for a solo consultant or actually anyone to put themselves out there. And as you said something that is great is if you fail, you win, because you're doing the right things, and then you try to get better at doing it, at writing or making videos, or at least at posting some content. Also, there is one thing actually that came into my mind in your work as a CPO. Very often, the procurement function is very closely related to finance, mostly the accounts payable. So when you work with those CPO, or you also actually working with the CFO, do you also need to also gain the trust of the CFO at the same time, or the
So I'd
CPO
say
is
it
completely
depends.
autonomous?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it depends. It's the classic consulting answer, right? It depends because it depends on the organization, right? So sometimes the CPO, as you say, will report into the CFO. Sometimes the CPO will have his own seat at the CXO table. I've been in organizations where the CPO reports to a chief supply chain officer, and they look at it that way, right? So it's really, it depends on how the organization is structured. So to answer your question, it could be yes in those types of organizations. But for me, it's really about everyone I work with trusting me to take on those files, right? Yes, and there's also the integration piece, right? So one of the things I always push with my clients, right, the CPOs, right, if they have a given scope and it doesn't include the entirety of the procurement process. So to use your example, accounts payable, I still encourage them to build those relationships internally with the folks that are responsible for the end-to-end process, and so that we can, because it's all tied together, right? So if you get a bad invoice, it's probably because something happened on the purchase order earlier on that's causing that bad invoice, right? So it's really an end-to-end process. You need to work together to be able to get to a mature process where things run smoothly. So yeah, I certainly encourage that and try to build it as well. And another one is IT, right? So you're only going to get as far as your IT team is able to bring you from an application standpoint, right? So having those relationships, having those continuous improvement processes, and co-planning discussions around, okay, well, here's our 3-5 year plan from a business standpoint. What does that look like from a technology standpoint to help us get there? So yeah, forging those relationships within the business as a CPO is key, and it's something I also help with just because of my background, having worked with IT organizations a lot, and then seeing the integrated nature of the function and its processes.
So that's great. I believe we have approached quite a lot of topics around your work. So we just talk about integration with other departments, integration with IT, the importance of making the selections, the type of let's say fears that could have a CPO when they start a project. How are you condensing that anywhere? I mean, will people have to
So
go to?
it's a good point, right? So I try to put evergreen articles on my website for those types of topics. I have a monthly newsletter as well that folks can subscribe to, where I try to highlight, pick out the top 5 news articles on procurement that month and share them with CPOs and just procurement professionals in general, so that they don't have to sort through all the articles, and I give them the nuggets that are, because I'm constantly reading as well, which goes back to those meta skills. And I recently put out an e-course as well. So because I was, we're having the conversation now, and this is stuff that I always repeat as well in my different client relationships. So at some point a light bulb went off, and I said, I should package this in a standard offering so that, folks we can all start off at the same level. When you start thinking about your procurement application portfolio, how are you going to go about deploying it, what should come first, and how the technology market is structured, right? So there's three main categories: ERP systems, source to pay systems, best of breed systems, and then there's weaknesses and strengths. Strengths and weaknesses
Yes,
for each of those categories, right? That are generic. And then as you start looking at specific solutions, you'll see how they pan out at a more granular level. But in any case, yeah, I'm trying to package that in different offerings so that folks can benefit from my experience without me having to be directly involved. And then when I am directly involved, well, I'm able to leverage that to say, hey, let's all start at the same level of comprehension and go from there, right? So that I've gone through the methodology, the approach, the different assumptions and knowledge that we should have, and then we can go from there and start looking at the as-is processes, the to-be processes, technology agnostic, and then look at, okay, how do we get technology to fit into those holes, right? That we've designed.
Yeah. That is excellent, and we will make sure that we have that in the show notes for people who will want to look at. Do you have like a name for the ebook or
Yeah, so the course itself is called
the course?
Implementing Procurement Systems That Work, because I'm sure you've seen projects kind of go by the wayside because of various different things that happen during projects. So yeah, implementing procurement systems that work, a roadmap for procurement professionals, right? So it's really geared towards
Excellent.
the business side of thing and saying, here's what you need to know as you start looking for applications that you're going to implement to reach your business objectives. But at the same time, if you're a functional analyst, a project manager, even a change management professional that's getting involved in a procurement transformation project for the first time, it's a good primer as well, right? To say, okay, well, you're going to be in the selection committee to choose different applications, or you're going to be helping craft a roadmap. Here's the things you need to think about in a systematic fashion to make sure that you're not heading into a wall.
That's that is excellent. And actually, so we have talking about the fact that you write, you have a course, so you teach, you present. Do you also do sometimes some speaking engagement on the topic?
Yeah, when they come up, I got to tell you, I used to do more actually when I was at IBM. Like I'd go to universities and you'd be on panels and do that sort of thing as well. I've done it less since the pandemic, to be honest, but it's definitely something I'm always open to having those discussions. Right? I find that's one of the most rewarding things of consulting is being able to, buckle down, learn something very deeply, deliver on it, but then share it as well, right? The sharing aspect and being able to mentor others on how to do that. That's the richness that consulting has brought to my life personally, because I've been exposed to so many different projects and industries, right? I think I've done 17 or 18 different clients, and then across 7 or 8 industries. So you see a lot of things and how things work, how they should work, what you should avoid, and that's always what's pulled me into consulting is knowing how the world works, right? Even if it's only for a very specific sliver of things.
Yeah. One last thing is, how do you see your company or yourself in the future? So your company exists since 4 years.
Yeah.
Do you have specific plans, or do you want to continue as it is?
Yeah, well, at least for the foreseeable future, it's all about solo consulting for me, right? And building a brand, building assets, institutionalizing that knowledge, right? Because I think a lot of times, like in IT, it's kind of the far west, right? In the sense where you look at engineering, it's very structured. Everybody gets a ring. You look at accounting, same thing. You need to, there are all these associations, and with IT, it's a bit less like that, right? So, and I think that probably contributes a little bit to folks getting on a project and then it not panning out and not reaching the desired business objectives. So I'm really trying to formalize, okay, well, because there's a lot of IT specific methodologies and approaches, but they're not tailored to procurement, right? So that's what I'm trying to accomplish, is really bring it down to that level, right? So as long as I keep having fun and creating and producing and being on interesting projects, then mission accomplished, right? And if I get to work with great people at the same time, that's a bonus. But for me, it's always been about the work, about the solutions, about understanding and then formalizing my understanding.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And the thing that you said about the engineers and the ring, I know that it is at least in Quebec, in the province of Quebec, where there is the order of engineers, and they all get a ring
Right, right.
on their
Yeah, I don't know if that's
little little finger.
across the board, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
we see those a lot around here.
Yes, indeed. So thanks very much, Joel. And my very last question would be, so in consulting lifestyle. So when I say consulting lifestyle, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, it used to mean, so I think there's two consulting lifestyles, right? There's like the corporate consulting lifestyle, being part of a team, which has its own advantages and benefits. And then there's the independent consulting lifestyle. So I'll comment more on the latter than the former, just kind of I'm in it. And for me, it's really being able to design a life centered um, around creation, around problem solving, around deep engagement in your work and with your clients. And that's really what I'm after. So perfect fit.
Okay, excellent, excellent, Joel. And if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place to go is pureprocurement.ca. And then on the upper right hand side of my site, there's a subscribe button. That's how you subscribe to my newsletter. And then you'll get news from me once a month on what's going on in the procurement application space and what you need to be aware of. And then you get my email and you just send me an email and I'll reply back.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Joel, and good luck in the future. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Consulting Lifestyle Podcast. If you have enjoyed the episode, leave a review on iTunes or one of your preferred podcasting platform. And if you want to further our relationship, please join our community. Our community is available at consultinglifestyle.fm/community. Looking forward to keep in touch with you.